Hi, my name is Ellen Condon and I am a volunteer with the Serve Philippine program. Our project is based in the Badjao community and we're working with a really amazing community there. It's really inspiring, and I suppose the aspect I chose to do for my vlog was the role of women in the Badjao society, because since I've started there I found that they're really inspiring women, and with what little they have they make so much out of. And I suppose, just in contrast to my life in Ireland, like Ireland at the moment, our society encourages like girls to get their education, to get their job, to kind of become so independent. And like I've have so many opportunities at home. I can go to school, go to university, get my education, get a full-time job. Like I can currently get a part-time job. I can play sport. I have just as many opportunities as any man in the country, which is really nice to know. But I suppose when you hear of all these different situations in different countries, and how women are treated, I just suppose I'd be so eager to learn what like the life of a woman is in a different community to Ireland and a different society. So it's really, I suppose I better start with this vlog with talking about the role of women's society in the Badjao community. So basically, the Badjao community, they have such a strong emphasis on women to be domesticated, to stay at home, and the kids to ensure their husbands are fed and just content, and that their children are fed and nourished. And even though they mightn't have the biggest budgets and they mightn't have that much food, that they just need to do what they can with what they have, which I think is really amazing, because in some situations they've so little. But I suppose to start with, I found my first impression of the role of women in the Badjao society really upsetting, because I was first introduced to women, and a lot of women have dropped out of school due to arranged marriages. They get married at the age of 14 and they won't finish school. And I suppose I just felt like they had very little influence on the marriage, and this would really be true. So I suppose arranged marriages in the Badjao community, so on average a girl could be the age of 14 upwards and she is being married off. So what basically happens is a man wants to marry this girl, so he'll say to his parents that he really wants to marry this girl, and what they'll do is they'll produce a dowry. So basically a dowry is different gifts that they show to the parents of the girl who's to be married, and it kind of just shows that the groom is able to support the wife and to be able to produce a really nice livelihood for her. So what happens is the parents of the groom and the parents of the bride sit down and they discuss the dowry. So obviously if the bride's family want this, that and the other, and the groom can facilitate all that, then yes, you can marry my daughter. You obviously have the means to marry her, like you can support her, whatever, that's fantastic. But in some situations what happens is the girl's parents might refuse the dowry, and they might just refuse for the man to marry the girl, so they just don't want the wedding to happen. So that means it's just called off. But what can sometimes happen, and this hasn't happened in years, I think it was the last time the two teachers that I interviewed said it was maybe 6 years ago. And what happens is basically it's called a Senegal, sorry. And what happens is a girl could be just going about her own business, walking wherever, walking to the shop, walking to the markets, whatever, and the groom will throw a white like blanket or a sheet or something over her head and imprison her and bring her to the chieftain's house. And he'll say to the chieftain, I want to marry this girl. And the chieftain will be like, okay, we need to discuss it. So he'll bring the parents of the bride back in and he'll be like, look, this, like, you'll need to sort out a proposal or some sort of an agreement so they can marry. So in that situation, not even the bride's parents have an influence on the marriage, which is really upsetting. But um, I suppose that's just their culture. And I interviewed two teachers in the Nano Nagle Centre, and they're both the Badjao natives, both Minerva and Paulita, which are they're very good to let me interview them. And they had no problem with the arranged marriages. Like, it's so embedded in their culture that they just go along with it. It's so interesting, I think. Um, but then once the girl gets even the proposal to get married, she can't leave the house in case the Bajau community believes that there's danger, and she can't even meet another man. She can't see another man apart from her family. So, as I said earlier, once most women get married at a young age, they drop out of school and they just basically have families and they raise them. And as I said, their main priority and their main responsibility is to ensure that their children are fed, and their husband will support them to provide the food and materials to keep their family going. But I think a huge impact to the Bajau community and the role of women in the community has been education. So basically, education, I think, has such a huge impact because I think the Nano Nagle Centre is the Montessori, and even young girls starting to go to the Montessori, they then progress onto elementary. And I think they, even their parents, just see the opportunity for the child to go to a better education, to get a job, and like they do actually start seeing the opportunities the child might succeed in later in life, which I think is really good. But I think as the years go on, many parents are actually refusing their children to get married at such a young age. Like, I have heard a few students have their parents have refused a lot of dowries so their children can finish education and actually can get a graduate. Because both Minerva and Paulita, Minerva was 14 when she was married, and there was a lot of difficulties she faced to finish her degree, but she did, and now she's a qualified teacher in the Badjao community, and Paulita as well. And Paulita was telling me that she's two little sons, and her and her husband also works, but she is not fully responsible. Like, they actually start to share the household tasks, and Paulita isn't the only one that has to make sure the children are fed and nurtured. That because she's kind of providing some bit of support to the family, that her and her husband are actually balancing out like the role of the man and the woman in society. So her husband is actually helping her with household and household tasks, and he might mind the kids sometimes if she's late finishing work, and she might mind them obviously then when he's finishing work, but it's more kind of balanced out, which is really nice to hear. And also, I feel like education has had a huge impact in the Badjao community. It's given women so much more empowerment because different projects have started recently. So I suppose the first one was Community Leaders, which started a few years ago. So it was kind of an open invitation to anyone in the Badjao community who wanted to become a community leader, and not one man applied for it, imagine. It was all women. So the community leaders is all governed by women, and oh my god, they're such strong and independent and such admirable women. It's fantastic to see. So I noticed it so much over the last 3 weeks. Like, they just are head on. They get involved in all the projects, all our projects, like painting the stalls and stuff. They basically are like, yeah, go for it. You do it. This is what has to be done. We'll help. What do we need to do, etc., etc. And even the workshops we were doing, like, they were just so enthusiastic about it, which is great. And also another project they started only last year was the Badjao craft. So basically the Nano Nagle Centre had started these little workshops, so like a sewing workshop and a craft design workshop. So around, I think it was like 20 women, and they learned all these different skills and actually started making different products. So the SAR volunteers are going home with huge suitcases full of the crafts, and they're all amazing pieces of work. But this is kind of providing the women with a little bit of money and an extra bit of support for the family, and I think it's so nice for them because they actually has that bit more independence. They obviously feel that bit more confidence in themselves, and they feel like they're just not there. They're not only here to mind their children, and there's more to life than just living at home. And I think in the future this will definitely progress, and women will definitely have so much more independence, which is so great. But Paulita and Minerva were definitely still saying that women will always in the Badjao community be considered to be the people to stay at home to mind the kids and have food ready for everyone, etc., etc. And I suppose when they were talking about it, they seemed like it was their responsibility, but because it's so embedded in their culture, it was just like they want to do it. It's like it's just done. You do it. Not don't complain about it. Like everyone does it, and I feel like there's such a tight network community that they want to be there for each other. So Minerva and Paulita around about their parents, and they want to be there for their siblings, etc., etc. And it's so nice to hear. So I suppose yeah, that's basically my vlog, and thank you so much for watching.